We have to focus on those aspects of the bottle. And then we're also layering on, which we eventually will get to, about how even enjoying that wine, how it can increase your senses on the other aspect of it. You being intentional about really smelling and enjoying this wine and understanding that aspect of it and how what you like from the wine.
Sit back and grab a glass. It's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today about to have a conversation with Stephanie Franklin, CEO and founder of Fly Wines. Listen, if you have something good to say, go ahead and say it. Give me a good review for Wine Talks with Paul K. If you don't say anything. We appreciate the review and the consideration when listening to the show. We're trying to bring the stories of inspiration, the stories of creativity, and the stories of passion in the wine trade. It's not about swirling and sniffing here. It's about what got us here in the first place and the things that we're experiencing. But Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I've been following you on LinkedIn and various different platforms, and I found it fascinating. I'm so glad we had a chance to connect today to discuss sort of the inspiration behind what you're doing, why you're doing it, and all the things that go along with this crazy business that we bit off. But yes, you were not always in the wine trade, and you had some life events that got you thinking about it.
Definitely. I thank you for that lovely introduction. The life events that you speak about is something that we, most of us, majority, do go through at some point in time. You just never expect it to happen early on in life. For my particular story, it happened with my untimely passing of my mother in 2020 that really had ignited a fire that was already there. Prior to being in the wine industry, I was in the tech world, the advertising, technology, marketing, technology space. And I had gotten to the point to where there's got to be more than this. And don't get me wrong, I had a great life. I loved my 4 times a year going, traveling abroad, going somewhere, thinking about the next trip, but I wasn't satisfied. And with my mom's passing, that did ignite a fire under me of like, there has to be more. And then it just comes from sitting with friends, inspiration, things about things that I enjoy doing, learning about wines. Luckily, I have some great friends that I'm surrounded with that are somms. So being that inspiration, so it just kind of made natural sense. I think I explained to you briefly of just sitting with a friend during the pandemic after my mom's passing and getting inspiration from some horrible wine. And it was like, oh, this wine is...
That's hard to do.
Yeah. It a light bulb went off, just the light switch. And I was like, I think this is, I could start this. And my friend just paused and looked at me like, what? And the inspiration from for Fly Wines came from there. So it's an ever-evolving story.
I mean, that's kind of an interesting thought. Let's kind of sit there for a second with this terrible wine thing, and this conversation is going to get into the weeds on this idea. But to get inspiration from a terrible wine, I went to a tasting the other day, and I had this incredible conversation with the winemaker from Dominus, and I thought I was so inspired to continue my quest to tell these stories because of his story and because of his inspiration. But to get inspiration from a bad wine, I mean, that's first of all, do you think it was bad because it was just bad? Like it was just one of these consumer wines that they throw out there and hope we buy for $6, $7, $12 or whatever it is, or that it actually had turned in the bottle and it was just a bad version of that wine?
I just think it was just that not turned in the bottle. I think they just kind of got a very beautiful packaging.
Yes.
And again, I tend to think the prettier the packaging, I know I'm not alone, the more apprehensive that I am towards the wine because they packed it up so beautifully. And it was one of those things to where the wine hadn't turned at all. It was just, this was just not, it looked like, it tastes like grapes that were harvested way too soon or they hadn't matured properly. So it was one of those things to where I'm like, this isn't right. And then you can taste a lot of times when they do a lot of different additives as well too to the wine to try to enhance it and bring out those natural qualities because maybe the grapes weren't fully harvested. So it was one of those things to where it was a combination that led me to be inspired and say, hey, in this particular brand can make wines and sell it and make money. What makes myself think that I can actually do that? And not only take the beautiful packaging, but combine that with great wine.
Did you think this was a huge risk? I mean, wine is, I think everybody that gets into this industry realizes, wow, there's a lot more to it than I expected besides just being an entrepreneur. So there's two pieces to this question. One is, you were at sort of corporate America. You were doing things in a bureaucracy, so to speak, a corporate bureaucracy. And then you had this idea to break away. Do you think that's part of your nature? Is that part of your family's nature? Is that something that you learned from your family? You just witnessed your family, or do you think it's just part of your DNA that, you know what, I can do it on my own?
I actually do think it is a part of my nature, seeing as though I have had companies before prior to where it was in maybe event marketing. But at the same time, those things did not last long, and I always ended back up within corporate America. But this time felt quite different. It felt as something tangible and getting more key players involved in it. There was a huge risk, but at the same time, there still is a huge risk.
Oh, yeah.
I was inspired and motivated by the fact of seeing my mom pass away so young and saying, why not? Mm-hmm. Oh, like I said, I tell people all the time, and I don't mean this to sound as if anything is just throwing away, but what am I so afraid of? Oh, I'm going to die. I'm going to die anyway. So why not live and at least enjoy doing something that I enjoy in this lifetime versus seeing and being a part of those processes that I'm not fulfilled on a daily basis. The only time I'm feeling fulfilled is either when the company is paying me my bonus or I'm going away on some major holiday.
Have a listen to Veronique Sanders. She is the directress of Chateau Bailly in the Peysac Léon district of Bordeaux. And the reason I bring her up is her innovation, which is a hot topic these days in the wine trade. Her innovation in the winery is a fabulous viewpoint from sort of the 40,000-foot level. And I think you'll find it intriguing of what she has to say about what's going on in her side of the world. And since we're going to talk about wine clubs today a little bit, I think you should go back and listen to my father. And we had a chance to sit down 2 years ago after his long career as a retailer in pharmacy, as well as the founder of the idea of Wine in the Mail in 1972, find some interesting caveats and things that come forward to today after 50 years of doing this. You know, you just fell into my trap here. So, no, sorry. I just finished a piece. I'm going to publish it soon. That's sort of an article, really, but it's about that same concept. And I worked at corporate America for 5 years, and I started a company, and I had like 5 partners, and we had nothing, and would not trade that experience for anything because it prepared me for when my father came to me and said, hey, somebody made an offer on the company. I want to sell it. Maybe you're interested. So I would have been prepared. So I'm assuming that, maybe I shouldn't assume, but that the experience you did have going into this project prepared you to do it. In other words, you had some background, some footing, some confidence that said, yeah, I can pull this off.
Yes, I did. My confidence in it came from that because my wine knowledge is still ever growing, but having that support system around me that are SOMs, and on top of the fact I have a background within sales and marketing. So I knew that going into it, there would be trials and tribulations. There will be a huge learning curve, but I wanted to change so drastically that I was willing to roll the dice and take that risk. And I was excited about learning. I love learning about wine. I love learning about the industry. So to me, it combined the best of both worlds. I enjoy wine. I like learning about wine. And I also now get to learn about the ins and outs in the industries and how it works in the industry and how it works overall. So to me, it was a no-brainer at that point in time, especially coming after such a huge loss. And it definitely was something that pushed me into that direction.
There's something about what you said earlier in that comment just then, which is you waited for your bonus check, and that was satisfying at the moment you got it, but it didn't probably take too long for that satisfaction sort of to just wear off. And then the next quarterly check, or however frequently you got your checks, is like, so it's like this, the satisfaction, the inspiration scale would blip every 3 months or whenever you got your check. And it's like that sort of a roller coaster. And the concept of what my article is going to be about is that's not what gets you up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to get up in the morning and go, I get my bonus check in 3 months. I hope it's good enough. Versus, man, I get to get up today and learn more about what I'm doing and challenge myself again. And the reward of that challenge is directly associated with my psychology and my mental fitness and my physical fitness, all the rest of it.
Yes. And then especially in corporate America, I found that the bar was always constantly changing. And I think outside of the normal day-to-day of working in corporate America, it does something to your mental aspect when you're feeling as if, okay, well, now the new next level, or, oh, this person doesn't think I'm good enough. What can I change in me? So I wanted to shift that aspect of feeling as though I'm in a world that kind of values people pleasing more and not just the results, because corporate America is way more than just results driven. It is results on that aspect, but when you're trying to move up in the chain of events, it's definitely much more relationship building, which is great, but it's so many key players. So for me, it was one of those things. I wanted to take my focus away from trying to build someone else's dream, and for me to focus on what if I gave and focused on something that I enjoy, which is wine, and build a vision and a dream for myself versus having this person building into their dream of their new software. And there's nothing wrong with that, 100%. But I think a lot of times we buy into the safety net of corporate America and this whole, I have the safety net. You don't have a safety net. They can still let you go at the drop of a dime. We've seen it day to day. I have friends I talk to all the time, 10,000 people let go, 2,500 people let go. So you're still losing that safety net. So for me, the aspect of, if I'm just going to still have that safety net can be gone at the drop of a dime, why not try to focus and build into something within the wine industry that allows me to further my dreams and allows me to build something that I feel inspired by. I used to have a hard time waking up in corporate America every morning.
It is.
Seriously, but now I wake up, my mind is just instantly going, inspired. I wake up much earlier, but I was struggling to get in the office, even working a remote office at home, to just turn on and at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm like, oh my gosh. Now I'm up at 5:36, ready to go.
And that whatever you do, and sometimes we're not as productive and our efficiencies aren't the greatest every day. We have those days, but that whatever you do is moving the needle on your own behalf. And speaking of remote offices, my daughter works for Apple. She hired on. She ran a store for a while, so she was retail. Then she took a bona fide remote job, and this job was written for and be around remote access. Of course, the remote access is my house, so we're her home office away from her home with her kids. So that's the change. But anyway. So if you're sitting with your friends, you're having a glass of wine, and you realize this stuff is horrible, and that's such a sad commentary on the trade, actually, and it will try to define the differences between the wines ethereally. I mean, between what you're doing and what you tasted that day. But what was that thought? Like, I can do this better. I can make wine better. I can market it better. I can design a better package. Whatever it is that you started out thinking over a glass of wine, that dream became something to execute. But what was that?
Yeah, it was the inspiration of building the best of both worlds. So I felt as though this particular company focused a lot more on the packaging and not the quality of the product itself. So within that aspect, I went back to my good friend who's our head sommelier, Giuliano, and I said, I think I will start a wine company. He said, oh, great. We should call it Fly Wines. And I said, great. And he goes, we have a logo. And I'm like, this is great. So literally it birthed overnight to where it kept nagging at me after leaving from my friend that next day. And luckily it was the pandemic, so we were all working remotely at home. And it just kind of kept nagging at me. And I said, maybe I really enjoy wine. Maybe I can put together a packaging. So it started off as an inspiration of creating a wine tasting box, which is what you see behind me. So our 5 wines wine tasting box is where we started, to have great packaging and great wine combined together, focusing on the quality, artisanal wines, very unique wines. So it started from there. The dream enlarged when we focused more on independent wineries from around the world, and more of just that honing on to that quality aspect, artisanal, unique wines. And then we birthed into our wholesale type of option, and then our wine subscription program. So it all started from that brief sitting with, okay, this is a tasting box is not great, but we can bridge the beauty of that tasting box and also have great quality wine.
I mean, I'm looking at your site now as we're talking. That's why my attention is moving to my right. But, and you mentioned something earlier, and I want to get into that right now about the wholesale side versus the retail side. But so you are evaluating, and are we finding good juice to put in the bottle, or are we finding good brands to sell to the customer? Or a little both?
A little both. We want good juice, not necessarily, because good brands are made. Anyone can make a good brand, but our focus is on good juice first. Mm-hmm. We, as you see, even in our wine tasting box, we work with Fortino Winery that's located in Gilroy, California.
Gilroy, what, a garlic wine?
Yes. Exactly. See, Gilroy garlic. But the thing about it was we wanted to focus outside of the whole Napa and Sonoma area, which is great. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But there are so many other wine regions within California that a lot of people, when they come to visit, they don't necessarily know. Paso Robles is starting to get a little bit more in popularity outside of people in California, but it's still very much so unknown. I have a friend who's actually coming to visit. The first thing she said, Napa. So it's one of those things to where that's the known. You come to California. So our focus was wanting to bring that visibility to those independent wineries and focus on quality juice. And we can build that brand from there. I said my sales and marketing background, as well as Giuliano, he's our product design, but he's also head sommelier. So we have that type of crafting to push the brand around it. But that juice and having that artisanal, unique quality of what they're developing, that's more important to us than anything.
So you started the idea started as a subscription model originally.
The tasting box. It started as a tasting box.
And that means they're 375 milliliter bottles, or they're all 750s? What size?
187. So we're talking
187.
About
wow.
Yes. So we wanted people to really enjoy the boxes at home and to not overwhelm people a lot of times with a ton of different wines. So you can easily enjoy this in a night with a friend to taste different wines. And another thing is, a lot of times when people feel intimidated when they buy wines and they're drinking wines by themselves. So they may not drink the entire bottle of wine. So it's like it goes bad, of course, after a certain amount of time. So within our 187 milliliters, it allows everyone to easily enjoy the box, taste different wines, and not be overwhelmed. So that's where the concept started from there.
Were you surprised, shocked, dismayed at the volume of wine that's available, and trying to sift through the various choices and how the industry structure works? What was your initial impression when you started to peel this back?
Well, our initial impression was to focus on our goal. So we didn't necessarily get overwhelmed by the volume. We wanted to focus on a lot of underrepresented countries or regions, even if they're popular regions, that don't get a lot of focus. So it didn't necessarily bring a total overwhelming, where do we start? For us, it was, you know what? Turkey, like we have Turkish wine. And I love that because a lot of people vast majority of people have not had Turkish wine.
Vast.
Never
I would
enjoyed
say vast would be the word. I've only seen in my career of 100,000 wines tasted, maybe I've tasted 2, and they didn't come through my front door. They came through a restaurant or something.
Exactly. So for us to have in our subscription program things like Turkish wine, and we have Italians, but it's not even those well-known Italian regions. We have like Northern Italian, so Veneto, and then we have the Umbria region, which again is starting to gain, but it's still not very much so a well-known region that you would get. Then now we're bringing in, within next year, we're layering on the Douro River Valley and Moroccan wines. Why? Because a lot of people have not had Moroccan wine.
Wow.
Moroccans make wine? Yes, they do.
That's pretty interesting because you already experienced it with this horrible wine tasting that you started this whole idea with. And then, my expectation was that you started to explore this and, you realize like there's so much wine to be made and there's more every day. It's kind of what screwed up this industry is this proliferation of bringing in 20,000 liters of some 50 cent a liter Spanish white, putting it in dozens of different brand names with beautiful packaging, and then the consumer goes, ugh, like you did. Well, not everybody starts a wine company because of that, ugh. But, it's, I thought maybe you'd come across this stuff, but you started, your focus from the beginning was to find these interesting wines.
Yes, that's our main focus. We want very unique artisanal wines. We're trying to enhance the palates of Americans. So even if you had a cab from us, it's not going to be the quintessential California cab. So you're not going to be able to instantly. I can smell a Zinfandel from a mile away. Yeah. And so it's one of those things to where we focused on a different angle and to not bring just everything in that tastes typical. So even if we offer Pinot Grigio, you taste the Pinot Grigio is quite different. If you go, oh, it's a Pinot. I had someone who did an interview with, she was like, I saw in the box it was a Pinot. But then she tasted it. She was like, this is delicious. That's what we want. We want to enhance the palates of Americans outside of just, I tasted this. It was atypical. Again, it's not necessarily bad. Atypical California cab, atypical California Zinfandel, or anything that just tastes. But this wine enhanced your palate. And the responses that we're getting and seeing in our subscription program is that they are loving the wines and how it's enhanced their palate and their understanding and detecting different notes outside of those quintessential wines that are just more French oak and smoke.
That's a tall order. I mean, you probably walk down the supermarket aisles like I do, and my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, she goes, you're looking at them again? I go, I have to they change all the time. But I think you'd agree that when you walk down Ralph's or Safeway or Kroger, wherever you're at, that they're almost monolithic. The brands are the same. It's almost as if somebody is selling the same thing to the same stores. And so you're up against tall order to market against those typical profiles. I mean, like we were in Potsdam, New York, which no one knows where it is, but my daughter lives there. And I went across the street to the liquor store hoping that I'd find something interesting. And it was all the same stuff. And I bought something I thought would be interesting after all my experience. And we didn't even finish it.
That's what happens. You open these, what you think are going to be interesting wines, and you're like, it's the same thing. Like he says, kind of like a step and repeat when it comes to a lot of American wines that are being made. And there's nothing to begin to say about that. But what happens is your palate does not necessarily increase and you're not understanding what you like about a particular wine. Like people stick with certain brands just because, I know what I'm getting. But at the same time, you really want to expand. The only way to expand your knowledge is to try various different notes, wines, and varietals that change that palate, that it enhance your palate.
Isn't that the exact problem? You just said it. I know what I'm getting. Mm-hmm. So to me, that runs counterculture to what wine is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an expression, in your case, of Turkish wine and Moroccan, who knows, Lebanese, these different regions, and they have their own character and then profile, and you're exposing your members and customers to that profile. But to say I know what I'm getting is exactly the problem, because you shouldn't be knowing the 2014 versus the 15, the 18, the 20, and the 21. They should be different.
Exactly. And that's what people are experiencing. They know what they're getting, but also they say, okay, I want to increase my wine knowledge. But like you said, when you go to the store, everything is pretty much the same. Beautiful packaging. People do great packaging, but these are very similar. So you're not getting those different notes and understanding the vintage years and varietals. You're not getting that difference. That's allowing for your palate to really grow and enhance. And that's what we're more focused on, and not just, it's a great, like I said, American or California cow. Okay, same notes, same. I can detect it. Okay, the same notes. There's going to be a lot of nutmeg, or there's going to be the French oak. It's just what we're not about. And to see our subscribers really getting that feedback and tell us, hey, the wines are great. I feel like my palate is enhancing and increasing, lets us know that we're in the right direction of where we're taking the vision.
It's a wonderful service. I mean, forget the idea that you buy some wines, you put your profit margin in it, you ship them, people get a chance to taste them, and you built the business. But the service to the consumer, to get them off the dime, it took me a trip to Europe with 12 people that I don't know why I opened my big mouth, but I had 12 people on a tour recently, and they all came back, and most of it was, we went to Piemonte and Bordeaux. Was like, wow, I didn't understand that difference that I'm so used to tasting, and I won't throw any brands under the bus in California, but
yes,
that typical Napa, the new Napa sort of profile, and now they tasted wines with structure and acid and kinds of interesting nuances, and now their eyes have opened up. So this is a really great service that you're providing your members to understand, and rather exotic.
Exactly, and you actually. You nailed it perfectly about even Italy and the different regions within that as well, too, because sometimes you do get the same quintessential Italian notes here, but to open it up and to say, hold up, let's really understand the different regions and how it works and the different notes and palates how you can increase your palate. It's very impactful as well, too.
It's kind of interesting, and I want to get into the current trends in this industry, but it's interesting because I've had a master sommelier many times. His name was Emmanuel Camigi. He's a well-known guy. He brings wine in from Spain, but he got his master somm in 1996. And he was saying on this podcast, when I started this quest for my MS, we had to learn about Bordeaux, Burgundy, Piemonte, Tuscany, parts of Australia. But the new world of wine, Argentina, Chile, was just emerging, and it sort of points to the dynamic, that was English, the dynamic industry we're in, because he says, now you have to learn about Friuli and wait till Croatia comes online, in America, because the wines are incredible, and they're all indigenous grapes, and we can't even pronounce them, and they're fabulous. So this part about learning about this industry is never going to end. You're always going to be finding something interesting. But I want to talk about two important industry, not trends, directions. And that is the BIPOC community getting some leverage and some access to the industry. And women in wine is a huge subject right now. And there's many women that have podcasts focused on that only. And here you are touching on both of those. Did you find headwinds on either front, being a woman of color in trying to do this?
I won't say necessarily headwinds, but a lot of surprises. Like, people were very much so. But I think, like you stated, two standpoints. First off, being a woman. Secondly, being a woman of color is another angle. I still get a lot of people, you're in charge. Yes. Because they're so used to seeing, it is a very male dominated, typically white industry. And then to see, they're getting now, I feel like the industry is now accustomed to seeing women, but they're still getting now accustomed to seeing a lot of people of color within the wine industry. And that's where the difference and where it's quite layered as well too. So I haven't necessarily felt any apprehension, but more of surprises than anything. People are very surprised.
Well, there's our mutual friend and acquaintance Angela McCrae, and I think I've mentioned earlier, I was at the Association of African American Vintners tasting. I was just loved the wines and had incredible conversations from people all over the country, not only just California, but Virginia wines. And I sensed what was interesting to me is exactly what you're saying. The headwinds that everybody encountered that I tried to peel back a little bit was really more associated with this tough industry than necessarily their color or their gender. And so great conversations. And I was trying to net down to, really the headwinds. And it was really mostly, how do we market this thing? How do we get on the streets? Certainly, the internet's blind to color and gender, so you really wouldn't know unless you read the bios and things. But it seems like there's a lot of movement and a lot of acceptance. Maybe there wasn't any real resistance. It's just the industry's intimidating and the subject's intimidating. But I found a real positive attitude about being involved. I mean, let's face it, you're one of, I think, the percentage of women executive ranks of wine is like 5% or 7% or something very low.
Then you're talking about the fact that we're on the importer wholesale, and that's even smaller.
It's even smaller. The winemaking side is growing. I think 25% of the winemakers in the trade now are women. And let's face it, you guys have better palates than we do. So common knowledge.
It's definitely it's good to see the impact, and I agree with Angela in the fact that how things are changing, and it's more of how the wine industry is very accepting of women, but now to getting the branding and getting that visibility, that's starting to change now too. I'm seeing a lot more women winemakers that are in a lot of even bigger things like Total Wine. So that is definitely starting to change. So our craft is that we have to create differentiators and we lumped in together, but saying, hey, these are great winemakers. Here's something that's going to enhance the palate of maybe where you started out with them. So that's our main focus. I've had a lot of people, I say, why didn't you start out making wine? I mean, being honest, everybody's making wine. Let the people that do the great wine make great wine. We will get to that standpoint. Eventually, you're talking about growth where we hope to see fly wines. Yes, we will have fly wines wine eventually. But right now, our focus is only on those independent wineries that find it very hard to enter the U.S. market, either A, because the barrier entry is high, or B, they can't keep up with that demand. And we want to grow them at a very nice pace that doesn't overwhelm it, that keeps their wine in great shape.
I think you defined something very important, and that is, and it bore out during COVID, and that winemakers are farmers. The mentality to become a winemaker is completely different than the mentality it takes to do what you're doing and what I did for 35 years. Because I wouldn't have nearly had the patience to wait a year for my product to become developed and then have a chance to screw it all up, even though I was delivered, proper grapes from the vineyard. So it's part of our industry that's important. You got to start with good wine. We know that, but without people like us, maybe nothing ever gets sold. And there's an article from way back from Burgundy when the Burgundians were getting together trying to figure out what to do in the 30s. With some of the appellations. I think it was an appellation meeting. And one of the winemakers said, we should include in our AOC, in our rules of our appellation, our little appellation, that you cannot advertise. Because that's what he said. And his logic was, because if we make good wine, they'll beat a door, path to our door. And we know that's not true. I mean, the competition and the amount of brands, it's not true. You have to show people what's going on. So was that something, were you surprised at that? Were you, did you expect the number of variables that it takes to get people to hear the message about what fly wines is? Or is this you just knew going into that we had, we had a lot of marketing headwinds?
Oh, I knew I guess I have a sales background. I work into the advertising technology, marketing technology space. I used to manage different accounts that would spend out $150,000 a month on marketing. So I already knew the headwinds and what was going to come with it. But that was one of the main things. And that's what we always focused on, is that there's a ton, I tell people all the time, there's a ton of good wine out there, but a lot of the really, really good wines you don't even know about because they don't have that visibility. So for us, we're focused on bringing those independent wineries, those really good wineries, right directly to you for you to actually taste and enjoy. But if you're to say that, oh my gosh, we were surprised, no. And it's still a challenge. It's an uphill type of avenue, but it wasn't blindsided. I knew exactly going in there was going to be a huge curve, educational component, talking about our wines, highlighting the difference. We even have to state a lot of times we go to different events and people are always like, oh, I'm going to taste the cab. And I paused and I said, this is not a California cab, because I need to get your mind geared into a different avenue. Because if not, your expectations, you're going to say, oh, well, this wasn't what I was expecting. Yes, because you're so focused and geared towards your mental and taste are geared towards this type of region and that grape, and that affects your palate. But now once you have that, your mind automatically opens up when you say, oh, I'm expecting something new.
I would think you probably go through this. I mean, for me, dinner, even in Los Olivos, we went up there for an odd reason, but we had a great time and had great wines. And conversation, because maybe I'm in the trade, whatever reason, but it's kind of an interesting situation. It always comes to wine. It's always part of the dinner conversation, whether it's your best friends or people you don't know. Like tonight, we're going to dinner with a couple that has started a RTD cocktail brand, and it's going to come around to wine. And so I always am fascinated by the idea that wine is intimidating by a lot of people, but the conversation, if it's in an unintimidating fashion, is very informative for people, and they love to hear the stories and they want to know what's going on. And you must experience that all the time, having started a company and stayed in this industry for the industry. The industry is going through some troubles now. I mean, we are losing people, and I'll tell you my opinion in a minute. But have you? And I was talking to this winemaker, a great conversation. You must listen to this podcast with Keith Surler. It's coming out in a couple of weeks. So philosophical when it comes to the wine trade. But, he said, like, I'm kind of hanging on. I'm only down, 5, 7, single digits. And that's actually really good in this industry, because there are vintage wine estates going bankrupt, with owning 12 wineries and these huge brands. Have you, and I don't want numbers, have you seen that? And are you doubling down on the efforts, or are we just staying the course? How are we handling some of this?
No, we're definitely saying that, and our focus is to really understand the needs of the Millennial and Gen Zs that do actually enjoy.
Oh, good luck on that.
And the focus is getting the understanding of when they actually turn to actually want or either mature into wines, because a lot of times people mature into wine at a certain age. Some people do not, and that's understandable. They'll always be whiskey, bourbon type of people. But our focus is looking into when and focusing on what they're actually asking for and requesting, instead of trying to get them to, I'm going to show you how you need to enjoy my wine. No, we're listening to those wine lovers within that Gen Z millennial population. That's saying, great, I want more sustainable wines. I want more unique artisanal type of wines. And we're saying, totally understandable. Here's what we have for you that will work for your palates and your demands. So I think a lot of times within the industry, it's a little bit backwards. They're trying to say, oh, we have to educate them about what we have. But I think we need to flip that a little bit and understand what their requests are. And then from there, we can work on the educational aspect of how we meet those requests and those demands.
Well, I think that's a healthy attitude. Wine, there's a group called the Artisanal Group. They're out of France. It's a brilliant women that started this sort of think tank for fine wines. And the concept is, well, look, wine's always been consumer driven. That's just the nature of wine. And I have a romantic view of wine, which there is something in that bottle that connects us to the earth, to our souls. And if it's properly made and honest, unlike the things you described earlier with all the additives, but an honest glass of wine that reflects the Turkish terroir or the Moroccan terroir, that I think every generation comes to it eventually. It may take longer for some, but clearly, in my opinion, it does not mean we do things like, and I won't throw any brands under the bus, but there's a brand out there now that has a crown cap, like a beer bottle, and there's a conversation starter underneath. I don't think you need to start I think it starts itself. That's what wine should do, is what it does. And then there's a sticker that you peel off the back of the bottle, and you write down the day you had the wine and who you were with. But wouldn't that preclude the idea that what's in the bottle is worth talking about?
Exactly. And I agree with you on that. We have to focus on those aspects of the bottle. And then we're also layering on, which we eventually will get to, about how even enjoying that wine, how it can increase your senses on the other aspect of it. You being intentional about really smelling and enjoying this wine and understanding that aspect of it and what you like from the wine. So like I said, I'm bringing it back to us earlier, talking about just everyday consumer brands at the grocery store. I like this brand. Why? Oh, I don't know. I just always get it and I enjoy it. Understand why you like certain wines and how, if you really heighten your senses of exploring that wine, how that aspect can affect other parts of your life by being more intentional. So there are so many layers into it that will allow, from a starting point of enjoying a nice glass of wine, and even understanding why you don't like that particular wine, that can enhance so many other parts of your life, your personal senses, your sense of smell, your sense of connecting and understanding the whole wine and food combination, and understanding how those work together.
It's pretty interesting. One of my friends was with us at Los Olivos, and I brought a brand that I love out of Napa called Ad Vivum. And he said something that shocked me, and it took me a minute to understand it, and it's going to fly right into what you're doing. And he tasted this cab, and it's a Napa cab, but he's a Bordelaise winemaker, so it has structure. And he goes, "This is so clear." And I wanted to give him a hard time first, because I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I know, first of all, it was inky, dark wine. This is extracted Cabernet. So I knew it wasn't the transparency of the glass, because you couldn't even see through it. Then I realized what he meant. It felt healthy and clear. My body, it gave me a clear understanding of what was going on at that moment as I tasted the wine. I related to it, and that it was a clarity in his opinion of it. He had a hard time articulating that, but I understood it when I feel something very real tasting this wine. And that was right on. I mean, I thought, wow, what an interesting comment from a novice, really, not the type. And then I realized, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I tell you that this wine tastes like blackberries, blueberries, just got cedar, leather, and all the rest of the terms that we use in this industry, you could say that about hundreds and hundreds of wine, which means you never really know what it tastes like. Because if I use the same description for a Syrah as I would for a Cabernet, depending on that wine, you're really not going to get the feeling of it. So how are you handling this idea? And I think you mentioned the other day you did a tasting down here in the Southern California area. Is that an important part of your marketing, is going to be like getting wine into their glass? Not just a subscription, but finding ways like get them to taste these wines?
100%. And it allows that one-to-one connection. And again, allows us to give them more of those things that they can actually understand and feel, versus like you're saying, oh, it tastes like leather. It tastes, okay, great. But no, how does that relate to my everyday type of life and understanding? And I have We even have one to where we talk about things that they can understand. I've never tasted leather. I can smell leather. I've never tasted. So we have one where, you taste honey. People have tasted honey. They can understand that. Things they can understand. This smells, even one where we have a varietal of Bola Jala, and this smells, I'm like, I'm going to give you something I know you understand. It smells perfumey. It smells like it smells lovely. People can understand that. Then they can articulate, versus if we just focus on those regular old, outside of the notes, to where I think that's where people get intimidated by wine, because you're coming to me from an aspect on presenting it as a wine professional, and I'm not a wine professional. Mm-hmm. But what we do is when we're able to engage with people one-to-one, we bring it down into terms and terminology that they understand and can articulate, and it's not intimidating. Now it becomes, I understand what you're saying. Yes, I do wear perfume. You could go into those different particular floral notes, but a lot of times people are going to be like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. I think the old school anyway, propagates this aristocracy of wine. Wine is aristocratic and is complicated. I mean, if you really, like you already said, you'll never stop learning, and not everybody's interested in learning about wine. They have other things, but they do know when they taste something interesting. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, even a novice can see through these doctored up, sugared up, acidified wines that aren't real, right?
Exactly.
It seems to me that's the pitch. So
we focus on that aspect that gives them like really genuine, authenticity, where it doesn't come from I'm superior to you type of aspect. It comes from let me help you understand where you are and how we can break this down to be less intimidating. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean you start a lot of gimmicks as well too. Like you said, like with the crown, it doesn't have to be gimmicky, but it just has to be from hey, come to me as a person that I'm learning, and don't come to me as you're superior than me and let me throw things at you that make me feel intimidated.
You're right on. We have more to talk about, but it's already 50 minutes, and I'd like to do this again because there's stuff to peel back and then check in with you in a few months, see how things are going, see what's changed. And of course, if you ever come to Los Angeles area, there's always something open around here.
Yes. We'll be in LA this weekend. They're having a big Huff and Land Cruiser event in Malibu, so we're excited about that.
Malibu is beautiful.
Yeah,
I grew up in parts of that, at least in the summertime with my aunt. We're quite a ways from Malibu, fortunately. But when the guy bought my company, which I sold last year, they bought all the inventory that we were selling as part of the club.
Yeah.
But during COVID, we were there buying anything I told them to buy, and so we had collected some amazing wines, and they wanted nothing to do with them. And so now I have this beautiful collection, unintended, because I never collected. I was never a collector of wine. I just, I was a Scarface. I sold the stuff, but I certainly understand it and love it. But now, really, that's all we drink is like really, and I'll never get through it all.
So you'll definitely have to exchange information. So next time I'm in LA, a longer time period,
we're definitely going to have a drink together. Such a wonderful opportunity to hear what you're doing and your inspiration behind all of it. But again, I'd like to catch up with you in a few months when things, when the next shift in our industry occurs, and see how it's going.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This was a very pleasant conversation.
Thank you for your time today, and good luck out there.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.